Hello, I'm Joe Dillette, owner of the carving shop, and we're shooting some videos on sharpening. It's going to be a series of videos. This first one is the basics of sharpening. We're going to be sharpening a pocket knife. Then we're going to have another video on doing tools, carving tools specifically, and chisels. Then, because the V-tool is very difficult to sharpen, video just on the V-tool, and then I'm going to do some techniques. Then I'm going to show you some of the homemade sharpening systems that I made, some power systems. A lot of people can't sharpen properly, and I'm talking about getting the razor sharp edge on the tools. And that's the purpose of this video. So this first one is going to give you the basics. What we do is we learn how to sharpen on a stone and a leather strap. People that have difficulty sharpening, they make the mistake of going out and spending a lot of money on sharpening systems, a power system, and they say, well, now I'll be able to sharpen, and they still can't sharpen because they don't understand the basics. So once you learn the basics on a stone and a strop, then you can walk up to any system and use it. All the systems I've tried out there, and I've tried quite a few, they're all good systems. They will all speed up your sharpening, but first you must learn to do it by hand. And so that's what we're going to do here today. Your tools are pretty simple. You have a sharpening stone. The sharpening stone falls into several categories. They're all good. There's the whetstone, which is the Japanese water stones. You have the hard carborundum stone, which this is. This is one I picked up at a garage sale. It's all dished out. I think I paid 25 cents for it. Then there's the ceramic stones. They're more expensive. The ceramic stones and the diamond stones, both of those do not need a lubricant on. When they load up with steel in the pores of the stone, then you just wash it off with soap and water. So let's talk about this lubricant that we use. On the water stones, we use water, and that's the Japanese water stones. And on the carborundum and the hard Arkansas stones, we're using oil. The reason that we use the lubricant is that when we are rubbing the steel across the stone, it's scratching off the metal. And we don't want that metal to embed into between the abrasives and load the stone up so it will stop cutting. So that's the purpose of the water for the Japanese water stones and the oil for the oil stones. Now the type of oil that you use is quite important. You can't use a lubricating oil. It won't destroy the stone, but it will keep you from sharpening your tool, because a lubricating oil, which is a 3-in-1 oil, don't use that, and the motor oil, don't use that. Both of those keep friction low, and what they do is they put a coating over it so to minimize the friction so you don't scratch the parts. And what we're trying to achieve is to scratch the metal off the surface. So the purpose of the oil in this case is not to lubricate the stone. The purpose of the oil is to keep the metal from embedding into the stone. So the two types of oil that you should use is a mineral oil or a honing oil. And they both work about equally as well. I would not recommend using a vegetable oil because a vegetable oil will turn rancid. A mineral oil does not turn rancid. So this stone has been saturated with mineral oil over the years, and when you do use an oil, it just takes a couple drops. Just a couple drops on the surface. Don't soak the stone in it. And then you just, as you're sharpening, you just spread that around. Now this knife is quite dull. So let me explain what I'm doing here as I'm sharpening on the stone here. With a grinding wheel or a sharpening stone, it doesn't make any difference what direction that the wheel is going or what direction you're going on the stone. If you're going into the cutting edge or away from the cutting edge or in a circular motion, it doesn't make any difference. What you're trying to do is to scratch enough metal off to form the edge. And when you start forming that edge, you're getting down into the fine edge. What happens is the metal gets, you're pressing on it, so the metal gets so weak that it curls away from the stone. And that's the burr that you're raising up. You're going to create that burr whether you're going into the cutting edge or away from the cutting edge or circular motion. When that edge gets so weak that it curls over, then that's the burr, and that's as sharp as that stone's going to get it. So the important thing on the coarse stone is, as you're rubbing on here, is to make sure that you create a burr the entire length of the cutting edge. So don't stop when you just have one little spot that you've raised a burr. Now I can feel the burr along the whole edge here. I'm going to stop it right now, and I'm going to show you the burr right at the tip. I wanted to show you what the burr looked like. So this is the tip of the knife, and you can kind of see as I rotate it, there you see right on the tip the burr curled over. Let's talk a little bit more about the angle. The angle that we're holding the knife at and the technique that we're using. First of all, the angle, take a dime and put it up right under the edge, on the back edge of the knife, and what you should see is the gap on that cutting edge against the stone close up. That should be closed when you have that dime. That dime is about 50 thousandths of an inch. That's less than a 16th of an inch. So you're not raising it much, but you're closing that gap. Now the other thing is, the shape of this blade is curved over. When I'm going straight across with that dime underneath there, raising it up 50 thousandths of an inch, my point is up off of the end. So what I need to do when I want to sharpen the point is I need to raise my arm up like this here, the whole hand, so that knife tip comes in contact with the stone. So I don't use the stones in this direction, or I don't use the strop, we'll be talking about that later, in the long direction, because as you're coming this way, your wrist needs to change the angle all the time. So the reason why I go in this direction is I lock that edge, that angle in, so that edge is down. Now that once I lock my wrist, I just move the arm back and forth, and that angle stays the same. When I go to get the tip, I need to raise up this way so the tip comes down and makes contact. I don't change the angle of the wrist. I'm just raising my arm up, keeping that same action, so my wrist stays locked through the whole process. I also do the other side the same way. Now I don't count the number of strokes. I'm not very concerned about the amount of wear off of each side, keeping it exactly even. It stays pretty even on its own. All right, that burr is created across the whole surface. So let's move on to the next step. This stone here, if you're buying a sharpening stone, you can go to the hardware store, you can go to on eBay, that's about $5. I would recommend you get a stone that's two-sided, is coarse on one side, fine on the other. This stone here is coarse, and it feels like about maybe 100 grit sandpaper. that's pretty coarse. You can use sandpaper also for sharpening. Let's say you don't have a stone. Get some 100 grit sandpaper, get some 220 grit sandpaper, and get some 400 sandpaper, and then a strop. The stone that I would recommend is from eBay or the hardware store for about $5. It's an oil stone. Use the mineral oil, which is the cheapest. You can get it from the drugstore, and use it on both sides, and pretty good. Then this is the fine stone. So if you bought that combination stone, which coarse on one side, fine on the other, you don't need this. This is a ceramic stone. I use it in the same way as I do the coarse stone, and all I'm doing is reducing the size of the scratches. Now it's important to note at this point, when you're going to sharpen a knife, this knife I started with was very dull to start with, and that's why I started with the coarse stone, this here coarse stone. And if the knife just needs a little touch-up, perhaps you don't need to go to the coarse stone. You can either go to the fine or right to the strop. So if you've got a pretty good edge all the way across, almost razor sharp, and you just want to just tune that edge up a little bit, then just stay on the leather. When a barber is doing his razors on a razor strop, he doesn't go to the hone all the time, the stone, every time he needs to sharpen. He feels when that tool is getting a little bit dull, and he just goes to his razor strap and he gets it. He just puts a new edge on there, just polishes up another edge. And that's essentially what this leather is. That's going to be our third step. So depending on the tool, on how dull it is if you have to start at the coarse, or you can start at the fine, or maybe just go to the leather and keep it touched up. Some of my carving tools haven't touched the stone in maybe a year, because I just touch them on the strop to keep it that razor sharp edge there all the time. So then the next step we go to is the leather. Now the leather does make a difference what direction we go, because the leather is soft. We can't go into the cutting edge because it'll dig into the leather. So we always must draw it away from the cutting edge. The other thing about the leather is the leather is a soft material, so it's like a pillow. So in all these cases, when I'm working on these stones, I'm pressing pretty hard. I'm also pressing pretty hard on the leather. So on the stone, when I'm using a stone like this, I'm pressing down about 5 pounds of pressure, or maybe even more. I never measured it until just before this video. I took out a scale I have, and I put the stone on top, and I pressed down my normal pressure, and it was just a little over 5 pounds of pressure. And that's quite a bit. The more pressure you put on, the more aggressive it's going to be in scratching off the metal. It'll sharpen faster. If you're just kind of gliding over the surface lightly, you're going to be there a month trying to sharpen it. So press down, get her done. Now on the leather, because it's a soft material, we can't keep the same angle as we did here. In other words, with that dime on this surface here, we touch that thing down like that, and if we use that same angle here and push down that 5 pounds, it's sunk into the leather. So it's at an angle. That leather is like this. So when you're pulling it across the surface, the leather's springing back, and what it does is it'll take the edge right off. So you have to lay the knife almost flat on the surface. So what I do is I lay the knife down, I push as hard as I'm going to push on it, which is about 5 pounds, and I just raise it up enough where this back edge is not going to drag, and I pull it across the surface. Now, the same as on the stone, I'm not buffing the curved edge because it's not making contact. Right now all I'm buffing is the straight edge. Now when I want to start buffing that curved edge, if I raise up and just my wrist is still locked in that position, I am picking up material on this edge. like a pillow, it kind of sinks in and it all around that tip because you're pressing that tip in. So to keep that from happening, what's happening is you're rolling the edge over. And so you drag it behind. So try to line this edge up of that tip with the edge of your strop. So you're pulling it along like this, and it's not picking up that material. But still, because it's a soft material, that is still going to round the edge, but not as quickly as if you're going to go perpendicular and come across. You're picking up all your compound that way. We mentioned compound. What kind of compound do we use? Well, on this leather, we have a buffing material. And this buffing compound that we call it is got a 0.5 micron abrasive in it. And it feels like a crayon. And you rub it onto the leather. So you've got two sides to the leather. You have a smooth side, and then you have the rough side. The rough side has that tooth on it that holds the compound. And you just rub the compound across. So this compound you can buy at the hardware store. It's you buy what is used either for stainless steel or carbon steel. They both work equally as well, and you can buy it on eBay also. It comes in different colors. The most common color is green, but there is some blue stuff that John Dunkel makes. I tried that. It works wonderfully. There's some white stuff out there, or this. There really doesn't look white much anymore because it looks almost black. Because when I rub it on here, the black metal comes off on this. This here is from a Woodcarver supply. It's a drier material. There's other compounds you can buy at Tripoli in the hardware store. All those work, but make sure you get for stainless steel or carbon steel, because that's a 0.5 micron. If you get any finer, like for plexiglass, that's a 1/4 micron. So if you get something that you're going to polish plexiglass with, and you rub it on here, it will do the same job, but it'll take you twice as long because it's half the size particle. So we want the 0.5 micron, which is for stainless steel or carbon steel. And when you go across the surface, you're actually turning that green compound black. What you're actually doing, that 0.5 micron, is actually removing the metal right off the edge, and it polishes that edge. And how I test the knife that it's sharp is I hold my thumb, so the thumbnail is at a 45-degree angle. I lay the knife in my hand like this, and I set it on that thumbnail, and it should grip it without sliding off. And if it does slide off, it's not sharp. If it grips it, there are some places that it's sharp and some places it isn't. So this isn't quite ready yet because it was sliding off. See, it's not gripping on that thumbnail. It doesn't dig up the thumbnail because you're just setting it on there. So what I do is I am just going a little bit faster, but I'm pressing hard, I'm pulling it against the surface, and I'm just raising it just a little bit. It doesn't make any difference how fast you're going. And I'm coming across the surface. I'm pressing hard on it. Now later on, when we get into sharpening the tools and everything in the other videos, I will show you how to put this compound on a board and use it like a basswood board. And then it's not a pillow anymore. It's not a soft surface. So you come down at the same angle as you did on the stones. That same angle that would simulate having a dime underneath the edge here. So let's see if it's sharp now. Okay. That's grabbing aggressively and not sliding now. There we got it. So in just this little time, we've got this knife so sharp it shaves the hair right off the arm. Thank you.